I was just old enough at 10 years old to get my license to ride a snowmobile by myself, and I was ready to do it. I already had a four-wheeler, so I knew I had a chance at convincing my parents that I needed one. I had a plan of attack on how to talk them into this. I figured my dad would be the easier nut to crack, so I started my proposal with him as soon as I completed a little research. He already had knowledge of sleds, as we had an older drag racing snowmobile, but it was not suited for the type of trips we wanted to take on them, let alone two people riding for hours upon hours on such an uncomfortable little machine. I figured my dad would be the easier nut to crack, since we already had an old snowmobile, and it would be much easier for him to understand where I was coming from. My mom, on the other hand, I figured it would be much harder to convince. She would always say, "You're going to get hurt. Plus, won't you get bored?" It was basically her equivalent to, "You'll shoot your eye out." I knew being persistent was the key to persuading her. Besides, what 10-year-old boy takes no for an answer? I figured my best place to start was by showing her all the safety features associated with the sport, such as the helmets and the restraint gear, but the truth is most of that didn't even exist, and I was just showing her to get her on my side. One of her favorite safety features that I explained to her was the ability to limit how fast the snowmobile could go. Little did she know that just like my four-wheeler, it was easily adjustable by a screw and any 10-year-old boy could figure it out. Just like I had done on my four-wheeler, I had already planned on adjusting the screw so that way I had no limit on the throttle. Her simple 20-mile-an-hour limit on my snowmobile would turn into an 80-mile-an-hour dream for a 10-year-old kid with just a simple turn of a screw. It took me almost 2 months and nearly driving her insane until she finally said yes and that she would take it into consideration. But I knew when she said that I had it made. After long deliberation on her part, she finally agreed to let me buy a sled, but her clause was that I had to help clean up the house. But that was nothing compared to all the fun I'd end up having on the sled later years. After successfully convincing my mom, it was back to my dad, and after showing him some of the trips I'd planned out, I had a pretty good argument. But he made it clear that if I bought a new sled, he would have to buy one too, and he wasn't really sure if he wanted to do that. With nothing better to do as a 10-year-old kid, I spent long hours on eBay trying to find the best deals and the best sleds for my dad and I. Since it was the summer, there was not many sleds for sale, but it was definitely the best time to buy, as everybody, if they were selling them, needed to get rid of them and was going to take whatever money they could get. And then it happened. I was cruising through eBay, and I found the perfect sled. My dad called the guy up to see what was up with the sled, to see if it was okay, and to see if it was worth me spending my money on. And when he called, the best thing possible happened. The guy ended up having another sled perfect for my dad and exactly what he was looking for. So at that point, my dad came back into the room and told me, "We're going on a trip." Before you knew it, we were on our way up to Wisconsin through Chicago, which ended up being a downfall as my sister and my mom spent all the money we saved buying both sleds together at American Girl. But that was a different story. I was getting my sled. Once we got there, the guy started it up for us. It was the best sound ever. We loaded him on the trailer and we made our way back, all the way back to Cleveland. And now it was a long 6 months until we could finally hit the trails. When we finally hit the trails, it was like nothing I could have ever imagined. Nothing my mom would have ever wanted to imagine either. The hills were steep, the sleds were fast, and it was quite dangerous, but there was nothing better than actually living on the edge. I was lucky enough to get a helmet cam for Christmas from my grandparents. This was one of my favorite presents ever. One of my favorite parts about it was just the feeling of being out in the open, somewhere nobody else, except the close friends you're riding with, are ever going to get to see. The person you walk by on the street the next weekend, they're not going to see what you saw ever in their lifetime. As safe as my mom thought snowmobiling was, it really wasn't. All the 120-mile-an-hour trips, all the riding on top of the mountains, stuff she would never know unless she saw the video. In the end, buying a snowmobile ended up being one of the greatest things I ever did in my life.